Hello, Professor Zhang. Welcome.
Recording in progress.
So I will welcome everyone. We just wait for around 30 seconds to wait for participants to come in, and then we will start our webinar for today. So before starting, I suggest that everyone please mute yourself when other people's talking. And then if you have any questions, please type your question into the chat box, which is under, I think it's under the bottom of your screen. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Okay. So good afternoon, good morning to all participants. Welcome to join the webinar Generative AI Media and Information Literacy. Yes, and my name is Ming, and probably some of you have already met me in person before. And I currently working as a researcher at the United Nations University Institute in Macau, and that will be the moderator for today. So first, I would like to introduce the reason why we organized this webinar. It starts with questions that really matter to all of us. Today, we use AI consciously or non-consciously, but do we really know about AI that we are using? What and how much do we need to know about it? Who is more intelligent, human or machine? Are we productive or overwhelmed in front of mass information? As individuals, I think one of our biggest concerns is how to respond to emerging opportunities and challenges posed by AI, and to make the best use of these changes for our own development and better participation in society. Media and information literacy can provide an approach. It is a compound conceptual framework proposed by UNESCO in 2013, which combines different types of literacy. So throughout the webinar, you may hear different terminologies like media literacy, information literacy, or AI literacy, etc. But today, we're not exploring distinctions among different types of literacies. We are here to explore and discuss our common concern: how to think critically and creatively, and how to better participate in the changing society driven by AI. Let's see how media and information literacy can help us in this regard. And I'm sure speakers' insights will benefit you. So before my handing over to our first speaker, there is some housekeeping notes for you. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, as I mentioned just now, and indicate whom you would like to ask. And we will address the questions one by one during the interaction session. Now, I would like to hand over to our first speaker, Professor David Buckingham. He is an honorary professor at the Institute of Education, University College London, and Emeritus Professor of Media and Communications at Loughborough University. His work focuses on children's and young people's interactions with media and media education. So, Professor David Buckingham, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you very much, Min. Good morning from me, or good afternoon to most of you, I suspect. I'm just organizing to share my screen. How does that look?
It looks
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so and also hello to Davina and to Professor Zhang, who we've all met before. Okay, I should probably start with a disclaimer. I am not an expert on AI technology. I maybe am an expert on media education, media literacy, but thankfully we're not talking with a technological focus today. I'm going to try and be very, very quick so that we have some time for discussion, but being quick is quite difficult for me. We're obviously living in a world which borders on science fiction at the moment. The claims that are made about AI, that it will be a form of magical transformation of the world. But also sitting alongside that, we've got the other side. We've got these stories of kind of dystopian nightmares. This is the end of civilization, the end of humanity as we know it. And actually, I think if we look back to earlier media tools, we can see a similar kind of balance, but also often a lot of exaggeration going on about, and indeed a certain amount of panic about what this medium is going to mean for us all. That's also the case, obviously, when we talk about education. So this kind of boosterism, this story about the wonders and the magic of technology and what it will mean for education is also very much around. We have a kind of solutionism, the idea that this technology will solve all the problems of education. And I think if we look back at the history of all of this, what we find is really a history of failed promises. We can look back to earlier technologies, to film, to television, to teaching machines. We probably remember the metaverse, which was going to completely transform everything in education a few years ago. And what we found, I think, in each case is that these technologies, in some cases, disappear without trace. In other cases, fall in with a repertoire of other technologies, but they often don't represent the magical solutions that the marketers and indeed some of the academics who talk about them tend to claim. It's very hard to talk about this at all because AI is obviously a moving target. It's shifting all the time. I think we're moving from a sort of phase one of AI, where AI was embedded in pretty much everything that was going on online. And we're moving now, and I guess what we're talking about primarily today is a kind of second phase of AI, which is generative AI, the use of AI to generate new media texts of various kinds. So against that background, I'm tempted to ask, what do you want first, the good news or the bad news? I think I'm going to start with the bad news and then hopefully offer you, if not good news, at least some ways of responding to the challenges that I think are around. In some ways, it's pretty obvious that AI represents the latest stage in what people tend to call digital capitalism. We're talking about, certainly with the launch of ChatGPT, and the way in which the company that produces it, OpenAI, has gone from a kind of public company to now a company run for private profit. We're seeing a dominance here of big technology companies. OpenAI is effectively run in collaboration with Microsoft, as indeed we find that most of the other big tech companies, Google, etc., are operating in this this space as well. There are threats to surveillance, threats of surveillance, threats to privacy. How these technologies are working is through the gathering of large amounts of data, often without the knowledge of the people who initially generated it. And we're seeing this technology being used often for quite dubious purposes. I'm sure you may wish to talk about China's social credit scheme. That's something that people are looking at in the West with growing alarm. But we also have very similar moves afoot with the use of predictive analytics, for example, in crime and in healthcare and welfare and so on. There are forms of bias and inequality built in to the algorithms that are being used to harvest this data. And not least of the problems is the intensive use of energy against a background of climate crisis. What we're seeing is technologies that require vast amounts of energy, electricity, water to run. And arguably, and certainly for some critics, this is just another form of pointless consumption. So this is the dystopian side of the story, if you like. There are also more specific problems which we can identify around media and information. For many within the media industries, they're facing, if not redundancy, at least a very far-reaching restructuring of the industry. Jobs will disappear. There may be some new jobs, but many established forms of work and employment are disappearing. And as I've said, these technologies also rest on the use of content, which is at the moment already online. This is the training data that's being used to train the technology. And there are big questions here about copyright, about intellectual property, who owns this data, who has rights to this material. And we're seeing big lawsuits going on, particularly in the US, with creative media producers challenging these companies for harvesting their material. And we also have, the problem of hallucinations, biases, fakes, misinformation, because if what the technology is doing is harvesting existing information, what it produces is only going to be as good as the information that it's using in the first place. So it's the old computer scientists argument of garbage in, garbage out. And there are some very, very funny instances of what are called hallucinations or biases or forms of fakery and misinformation going on. So in many ways, older media problems, established media problems, but taking a new emphasis in relation to AI. How does education respond? Well, I think so far what we've tended to see is a rather narrow debate about cheating, that students will use this technology to write their essays for them, to do their coursework. I actually think the problem is, or the issue here is much bigger, because what we see with educational technologies generally is education being seen as a lucrative market. And it's a market not only for the selling of devices, the selling of software, but increasingly now under the new economic model of the media industries, it's a market that is about the gathering of data. And again, those questions about student data and students' rights to privacy are absolutely arising in the sphere of education as well. And then, of course, as in the media industries, there are questions about what happens to people who are already working in this sphere. We've seen, I think, a general de-skilling or deprofessionalizing of teaching. And the question of, I don't think teachers are going to be replaced by robots, at least anytime soon, despite pictures like the one I'm showing you. But nevertheless, there is a challenge for teachers in thinking about, what is their contribution? What is their role here? Why do we need media education? Well, I've been making this argument all my life, most recently in this book here. I think in some ways the big issue here is to do with transparency. We're having software that is capable of harvesting data without even the software necessarily being able to identify the original sources of that data. So there are questions here about how we know where this material has originally come from. There are questions about the transparency of the technology itself. How do we know how algorithms, the methods that are used to select and process and turn data into something resembling meaningful communication? How do those technologies or the algorithms actually work? And also, how do the companies work? There is money, vast amounts of money changing hands here. How visible, how transparent is that process? And I would say the key task for media education in this context is making these things transparent and evident. Now, when I talk about media education, important to say that I'm talking about something that involves critical thinking. It's not just a technical or a functional matter. I think when it comes to educational technology, media educators are asking the same kinds of questions that they are asking in relation to other media. We need to be questioning the tools that we're using in education. And one of the ways in which we do that, or we certainly have historically done this in the UK and elsewhere for 50 years, is through the use of key concepts. And one of the things I tried to do in my media education manifesto, this is now 5 years ago, was to argue that we can take existing concepts that educators know well, or some specialist educators know very well, and apply them to social media. And the question is, can we now apply these to new media, to AI in particular? So these are the four concepts: production, language, representation, audience. And I think there are ways in which we can take these concepts and apply them. So under production, we would be looking at how the industry works. How is this market in technology happening, and what are the consequences of the business models in terms of what we receive? So we're looking at questions about ownership. We're looking at the marketing of technology, and we are, I think, raising questions about the need for regulation and what kinds of regulation are possible. At the moment, we're in pretty much of a free market situation, and there is increasing need, I think, and urgency around the question of regulation. Especially, I think Europe has gone further down that road than anywhere. Language. Okay, so I think what AI offers is at least the potential for a kind of experimentation. So semiotic experimentation, play with meaning, systematically playing with the prompts, systematically playing with what comes back and sending it back. In the process, I think what we're doing is exposing the algorithm by changing the prompts, by saying, what about this? What about that? How about doing this in this style rather than that style? How about doing it for this kind of reader rather than that kind of reader? What we're doing is exposing, or helping to expose, how the algorithms are working. Around representation and audience, clearly there are big questions here, given where the data comes from, about veracity, reliability, bias, how far we can actually trust what AI is producing for us. And I think there are ways that we can get to those questions, again, with a very well-established pedagogical technique of positioning students as producers, or at least simulated producers of media, and then getting them to systematically look at and analyze what they come up with. The last slide here, you'll be pleased to know, is around creativity. I think there's a bit of a danger that we can be seduced by the quality of, or the apparent quality of what comes out through generative AI. It's offering us, I think, much more potential in terms of reusing, remixing, reworking existing media at a cost to copyright, certainly. I think there is a question, though, about what we mean by creativity. Is prompt engineering a form of creativity? I would argue that we still need those critical concepts, not just as we analyze what's going on, but also as we engage in creative productions. We think through the results of what we're doing creatively. So that is me, and that is my 15 minutes or so. I have written about this on my blog, so please go and have a look. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor David Buckingham. Thank you for your sharing. And yeah, so I've already have some questions on my mind, but we can address later. And now I would like to welcome the second speaker, Professor Zhang Kai, to share her thoughts. And she is a professor from Communication University of China and also the director of Media Education Research Center at the university. Her work focuses on media and information literacy, international news, and international communication. So Professor Zhang, the floor is yours now. I will share the screen from my side.
Okay, hello, Ming, and could you hear me? Yes. Okay, now good. Anyway, it's a good afternoon in Beijing, and good morning to Professor Davy. And Davy is he is my supervisor when I was a visiting scholar in UK, in the University of London, and very nice and very happy to see him here. Okay, now for my 10 minutes, it's about the information literacy, especially when we're talking about it in the era of the artificial intelligence. The next slide. Okay, so as we know that the information literacy, such kind of a terminology was coined and was mentioned by the American the Paul, and he said that the information literacy is the ability to understand the importance of information and to use the tool, skills to access, evaluate, and use that information effectively in a specific situation. And nowadays, when we mentioned information literacy, actually in the past 50 and 60 years, people have a more, discovering and understanding about the terminology of information literacy. And now when we mentioned the information literacy, it's more than the skills. And also, you have to put into the concept and the situation of intelligent. We say it's the artificial intelligence. So this is the ability to recognize when the information is needed, especially when we are in the information fog. So to effectively locate, evaluate, and use and communicate information in various forms, it is a kind of ability which is called information literacy. And it also encompasses a set of skills that enable the individuals to critically access the credibility, the relevance, the accuracy of the information, and particularly in today's AI environment. So in the context of AI, information literacy extend to include algorithmic awareness, understanding how AI system curate, filter, and shape the information we encountered every day, every hour, and every minute. The developing in critical thinking skills is necessary to engage responsibly with this AI-mediated information. And it is the fundamental competencies to navigate the complexities of a modern information ecosystems. So this is the, when we talk about the information literacy nowadays, and we will find that people increasingly we will see that people increasingly prioritize information literacy in the era of widespread AI adoptions. And just because AI has transformed how information is generated and disseminated and consumed. Now, for example, there are several points. And point number one, navigating AI-driven information overloaded. As we said, we've got the lots and which is the aimless information, and which is overloaded. And how can we use it? And how can we face it? We can take an example. Now, several dozen years ago, we only have now each season we got the two, set of the clothes. And when I washed these clothes and I just put on the another one. So when I change clothes, I would never think about which one I would take because I don't have any choice. But now, when I open the cardboard, I will find that the many dresses and clothes there. And we have to, everybody will, stand in front of the cardboard and have a kind of a problem of making decision and to choose which one I'm going to put on myself. So this is so we can similarly when we facing lots of informations, so every people will encounter some of the problems and some of the difficulties in making the decision, what information to choose and what information to follow, just because overloading information. And second, when we consuming the information on the network, which was delivered by the people and also disseminated by the AI, the systems. And we'll find that the loss of information is very confusing and even is misleading. So we have to combating the misinformation. And this is another reason we need the information literacy. And besides this too, now, for example, understanding algorithmic inference, and we have to know how to enhance the critical thinking. And also we should be aware of the ethics problems in the information transformation. And just because the AI and also information technology, we got a lots of tube and the platforms to learn new things, something new, and the new knowledge. So when we say something about the information literacy and even the media literacy, and one of the topic and one of things that people are concerning a lot, it is the lifelong learning, because we need to update, the information, upgrade our ability of learning. So now when we're facing the machine, and there's a new kind of learning that is called deep learning. So all these things should be included in the era of information literacy. So when we know that the information, when we in such kind of context, we are thinking another kind of things, that is our lifestyle and the way of learning, the way of thinking, and the way of life are changed. And who changed it? We will say it was what? AI changed our world. And then we will ask, who will change the AI? So as AI rapidly evolved, the relationship between the human and AI becomes increasingly intricate. And valuing this relationship involves recognizing that while AI has the potential to significantly improve our world, its development impact depend largely on human decision and ethical considerations. So I would like to give some further explanation about the answer, about the key to the answer, who will change the AI. Now, from the 4 points or 4 perspectives. First one, human AI collaboration. All systems, while powerful, are tools designed by the humans to augment our capacities, our capabilities, from solving the complex problem to optimize the daily tasks. The most productive relationship between humans and AI should be one of the collaboration where the human provide context, judgment, ethical oversight, while AI contribute efficiency, pattern recognitions, and scalability. And the second perspective to respond to this question, who will change the AI, is ethical oversight and control. The development of AI is guided by human values, governance, and ethical frameworks. Humans are the ones who define the boundaries of AI's capabilities and ensuring that AI serves societal interests while respecting privacy, fairness, security, and blah blah and something, and etc. And ethical AI developments should prioritize the transparency, accountability, and inclusivity to mitigate biases or harmful impacts. And the third aspect is dynamic inference. While AI can change and enhance the human experiences, it is ultimately humans who shape AI through programming, data input, and policy making. We change AI by training it on different data sets, modifying algorithm, and adapting its applications in response to the social needs and ethical concerns. And the fourth point is the fourth perspective is mutual evolution. AI systems evolve based on the feedback from the environment and the users. As AI systems are integrated into various industries, from healthcare to education, human use patterns and decision makings, all this influence the evolution. So likewise, human society change as it learns to live with and adapt to AI innovations, and making this relationship a concept tool, a constant tool of influence. So in that case, if we want to solve all this problem, in these 4 levels, so we should say AI needs our human beings users' perspective, which are invaluable in the development of AI systems. And here's why, here's the why, including device users' perspective, is essential. There are several points, 10. First one, as you can see on the screen, is a human-centered design. And second is relevance and usabilities. And for the first one, the incorporating users' perspective ensures that AI systems are designed with human needs and experience at the forefront. And this human-centered approach leads to more intuitive, accessible, and useful AI applications. And the third point is ethical consideration, and the fourth point is diversity and inclusion. And the fifth one is a feedback and iteration. The next one, trust and acceptance. The number 7 point is identify gaps. And also, the user's perspective can help developer understand the legal and regulatory implications of AI, ensuring that new technologies comply with relevant laws and standards. So the point number 8 is regulatory and legal compliance. And point number 9 is societal impact. Engaging with the users allows the developers to consider the broader, societal impact of AI, which includes potential job displacement and social inequalities and other long-term effects. So we have to think about the societal impact in using or engaging the AI systems. The last one is co-creation. So involving users in the development process can lead to the co-creation model where users and developers collaborate to shape the future of AI and fostering a sense of ownership and a shared responsibility. And here I would like to mention an example that when I use the ChatGPT in the past 1.5 years, and I noticed that the users really have some impact and play the key roles in cultivating WeChat, which could be taken as a tool. And this tool also could be upgraded by the users. So how the user to make a good use of the tool, and which also are connected or related with information literacy. Now let's come to the next slide. And also the last one. So information literacy plays a key role, a crucial role, or we could say the critical role in shaping and balancing the relationship between the humans and AI. So in my teaching and also in my research, I noticed that we have to pay much more attention to the users. And also we have to, have a proper approach to the relation between the machine and the human beings. Now, for example, when we understand the AI influence on information, the information literacy will help individuals to recognize how AI system process, filter, and present information. And this kind of awareness is crucial. It's very important for users to critically access AI-driven outputs, whether it is news or some other the media products, or we say the platformization products.
Professor Zhang, for the time.
Yes, sure, yeah. So the second point is a critical consumption, and third one is ethical decision making, and the fourth one is the data privacy and security awareness, and also include the empowerment in human AI collaboration and adaptations to AI-driven work environment. And the last point for the crucial role for information literacy is promoting algorithmic literacy. So in summary, information literacy empowers the human being to maintain the balanced and informed relationship with AI, so as to ensure that AI technologies are used responsibly and ethically, and with the crucial and critical understanding. Okay, this is what I want to share with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. And I really want to have more time and to listen to you, but however, we need some time and to give our participants and our next.
I do understand.
Yes, next speaker. So now let's welcome today's last, but definitely not the least speaker, Professor Divina Frau-Max. She's a professor of media sociology at Sorbonne Nouvelle University and a specialist of media and information literacy, cultural diversity, and internet governance. So Professor Divina Frau-Max, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Min. It's a pleasure being with all of you. Here I am in Paris. It's about 11:30 in the morning, but I can imagine you in Macau, where I went a long time ago. I'm going to share my screen rapidly so that we can give as much time as possible to the discussion. I think I'm going to totally piggyback on my colleagues' presentations, which is going to make me gain some time, hopefully, so that we can be all together in the discussion. To go quickly, I'm going to emphasize more maybe the design considerations when we go into media and information literacy, and push for the fact that we are not looking at any information systems. We're looking at what they do to information and in particularly to media. And today, with artificial intelligence mixing with information, we are finding ourselves with synthetic media. And we have been living through various winters of AI and various myths and panics of AI, of course, because it raises concerns over control, human agency, independent decision-making, and what fiction does. It has an interesting role in society, of course, but the kind of, and I see that David is laughing because we have the same way of thinking, is that the fiction actually brings up the ethical situations. It always ends up badly for the AI, by the way, up to now. So I think we are in a new stage with more recent myths. Of course, myths get invented, and we have the myth of intelligence. For me, it's a myth. I'll come back to that. And the myth of the existential risk. We are going to disappear. There's going to be a supra meta intelligence that is going to displace us. Goodbye, humans. Reality, I think, is probably different. I think by now, this negative cognitive bias about AI that we've had, that it's doomed and it's bad, etc., is changing, and we are at a reality check where we recognize that we are dealing with two types of AI, the weak and the strong, and they're here to stay. So, of course, we have to go with it. I think in terms of terminology, I would like to adopt and introduce the EU Act on AI, which doesn't speak so much of AI as a field of research, which is, legitimate in its own right in the computer sciences, but AI as the user approach, the machine-based systems that we have to deal with. And this is what the EU Act talks about, including adding the risks that AI is adding to society, but also the opportunities. So when I was saying synthetic media, they're already here. You can see Switzerland, France producing their own AI systems. We have deepfakes produced with AI. Sometimes Tom Cruise doesn't say what he's supposed to be saying. NewsGuard, I recommend that you go to newsguardtech.com. They look at how many synthetic media there are. I went this morning before coming to discuss with you. We are 1,110 AI-generated websites producing AI, and unfortunately, a lot of false narratives. And AI is having hallucinations. It's as if it was smoking some kind of dope. The word is bizarre, in my opinion, and I'll come back to that. But basically, sometimes AI produces false information, willingly, unwillingly, certainly always with authority and confidence. And maybe we should have critical thinking about that. Why? It boils down, and I think David was saying it, it boils down to data, not to AI. It boils down to the quality of data at the beginning, at the entrance, at the exit, and the lack of context often. And of course, with risks of copyright. So I'd like to be gloating today with you. I'd like to gloat with you because AI is no longer, is no longer a shrinking violet. I don't know if you remember the conversation back to 10 years ago, when in Europe we produced a report saying media and information literacy is out. The conversation is now all about coding, computing, and it's out. Well, look at that. The latest piece of news is the UN Pact for the Future, with an article dedicated to MIL as necessary in the curricula by 2030. Great. UNESCO, of course, today we're celebrating Global Media Literacy Week, has its own composite approach to it. The DICH Camp in the EU mentioned a lot of media and information literacy points and dimensions. And so we are back, and we are back having to deal with changes in our own field. Disinformation, but AI are also changing our own field. We're not only a pedagogical practice as we used to be, we're also more and more a political project, always user-centered, I should hope, with citizenship on one hand, creativity on the other. And these are some stakes, but also don't forget protection and participation so that we can engage with trust. And we engage with a lot of things. I talk about a transliteracy. We're dealing with documents, with news, with data. We're dealing with mass media and social media, and now we should add synthetic media. So a complex world that we circulate across seamlessly. We are in all these different platforms, networks, etc., from one to the other, and young people like us move from one to the other seamlessly, which is complicated to create critical thinking and creative thinking. But in media and information literacy, one of our characteristics is always to say there are risks and there are opportunities. And we avoid danger. Danger is really a threat, but risks are to be taken, avoided, managed, mastered, and opportunities embraced. And this is how we come up with a competence framework with media and information literacy, usually, that talks about knowing how to be, and knowing how to become, which is what I introduce to the old knowing how to be together. But knowing how to become, for me, savoir devenir is about projecting yourself with the affordances that you get from the digital world. So for us in media and information literacy, it all boils down eventually to competences. What are the words we put and we help young people put in the uses they make of these tools? And I insist on the word tool. Professor Zhang also used that term, and it's very important because at the moment, AI and generative AI systems present themselves more as magical tools and magical ideas. If you think of practitioners, it's complicated. As David was saying, none of us are AI trained, and I think there's very few people who actually can claim to be AI trained. So we have to start from what we know, one step at a time. And the stepped approach is, I think, something that we can all share, going from our practice of media and information literacy without AI to media and information literacy with AI. The definition I've adopted is the one proposed by our colleague Joel Swart about algoliteracy, the combination of users' awareness, knowledge, imagination, always remember fiction, and tactics around algorithms. And in a stepped way, I would add to her definition the knowledge, awareness, imagination, tactics around AI systems. And what I propose is to keep adding to media and information literacy, but using the familiarity principle and taking nested literacies around data, because data is at the core. It's not JAI, it's data. But data is now taken into algorithms, and generative AI is supposed to be able to modify its own algorithms. But we have this nested little onion here, and we should concentrate on the 3 dimensions of it. So when I talk about competences, I think of it as a butterfly. And as you can see, for a butterfly, what's important is not just the skills and the tools skills, which is to say the ability, the operational dimension, as David was mentioning. We have to build knowledge, the know. We have to build the know how to be, and we have to build the values and the knowing how to become. The problems with privacy, participation, intellectual property, surveillance, they are key, especially in a global environment. So think of it as a butterfly, and remember, if you remove one wing of a butterfly, it can't fly. You need all four together. You can't prioritize one over the others. So all these big values, macro competences, etc., they have to be translated for the users, the practitioners, for the young people, for us teachers, into micro competences. And what I'm showing you is what we're doing at Project Algo Watch. We've developed 24 core competences, micro competences for young people and professors, teachers to embrace, engage with algo literacy and AI literacy. We've used the DG Comp, but you see that sometimes DG Comp doesn't have what we think is important. Understanding generative AI and how it generates answers. Do you speak AI? What is this vocabulary? So you can go on algowatch.eu, and for the sake of gaining time, I'm not going to go into each of the 24, and of course they're going to be expanded, but it's just to give you a start, to start with the familiar, what we know, and build from there. So we go towards knowing how to be, knowing how to become, and remember, it's always important to know about the law, and here I'm totally in agreement with Professor Zhang. And here is how we've been implementing media and information literacy in our design via a quiz. Here we have our competences. We've adopted a format. We're going to have questions, answers, and feedback if the answers are good or bad. Sort of relatively simple, stating that we know how to do this. We just have to add a few other things that wasn't there in MIL design, but we now have to integrate. The first one is sort of answering what the industry is telling us. It's a black box, we can't explain what's inside, trust us, etc. And that gives me the feeling I am Alice in Wonderland, you know, eat me, drink me, and you don't know what's inside. It's not acceptable. The industry and the law has provided an answer for that, against that claim that algorithms program themselves without human interaction and we can't do a thing about it. And it's explainable AI. And you can see that explainable AI is good for data scientists, it's good for the business people, the regulators, and us. So it's an important concept to bring into the negotiations we're going to have with these AI systems, because it's going to make us ensure that we know in an understandable way how data are dealt with at the entrance and the exit of the system, and so as to ensure fairness, equality, but also effective redress in case of torts and damages. It's very important for us. The other design consideration that we have to put in our courses and in our dealings with all the other actors is this issue of data integrity, because it's key for information integrity. I think this is all what we want to do here. It's unacceptable to say that AI has hallucinations. It gathers data arbitrarily, convincingly, but it's biased in its selection. It's not representative in its samples. It shows no underlying models. It is a statistical proposition made on proximity of words to each other, tokens. It has zero claim to truth. And so we really have to be careful, critically thinking about quality of data at the input, the understandable form. Remember the XAI, they all build on each other. And the third point is verification of sources. I've showed you how much disinformation is going on in there. Verification of sources is the core of media and information literacy. And that's to counter the argument, oh, we're not accountable. AI is producing this and we don't know where it comes from. But in fact, the sources of generative AI, though they look valid, often are synthetic. They're often hybrid. They're often remix. They're often from scratch because AI hates not giving you an answer. And they are, if you look at them, and always make sure when you have a prompt to ask AI at the end and give me your sources, that's a reflex of critical thinking. You'll see that when you test the responses, you have erroneous and truncated bibliographies. You have answers with no indication if they are primary or secondary sources. I actually think we are actually dealing with a tertiary source, and I'm calling on IFLA, on UN, on UNESCO, and to have a debate on what way we can quote and the quotability of AI when we use it. No transparency, no principles. And so we need to go towards the tertiary sources. We need to hold AI system developers accountable for our tantamount to forgeries. And avoid also that AI gets poisoned itself by its own toxic answers on which it could be trained. There is a risk here to AI itself and its own life cycle and our own information life cycle. And then last point, and I think this piggybacks on what has been said by Professor Zhang, is how do we deal with our user interactions with these tools that look human but are not human? So no to the human comparison. It's a misnomer. And it's built by marketing. It's a marketing strategy to make AI look like us so that it can penetrate more easily in our households, in our own intimacy. But remember, and please put it in all your classes at all levels, it's statistical calculations and extractions. It doesn't have feelings, even when it says, I'm sorry for you. Don't even think about saying thank you to it, because it's not touched by that. It has no agency. Be careful, because you're accountable as a user. It lacks transparency. Careful, because sometimes the data on which it's trained are not up to date, and this is crucial for news. And be careful, because it has no decision-making power. So what I suggest, and it's urgent for us media literacy practitioners and teachers, we have to absolutely propose an alternative glossary of terms. Artificial intelligence is computational extraction. Prompt, it's an instruction. Conversation, for God's sake, stop using the word conversation. It's manipulation of symbols and therefore manipulation of your mind. Hallucination is sheer error. And the black box is lack of XAI. Okay, so let's be very sure about all these things and make sure that we embed them in our presentation. And I'm sending you here,
Sorry,
because we're
Professor
finishing,
Divina.
I'm aware of the time. So you can go to the UNESCO policy brief that I produced for UNESCO on the request of the CI division, and you have it here. Basically, some key messages are the ones I told you about, I dealt with you about. Make sure that AI literacy is embedded in MIL with those 4 design issues. And for the policymakers among you, the UN, including MIL in all the school curricula, that's already one. Thank you very much. Explainable AI in all the MIL education standards to the ed tech. Providing resources for educators. That's why I do AlgoWatch, and I think a lot of us, especially in Europe, are now working on producing resources that are usable and reusable for educators. Funding, of course, is key. And evaluation, because we need a baseline, of course, and to see how AI systems are really contributing or not to our well-being and to our collective intelligence. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Divina. It's very interesting. I almost forgot my responsibility today as a moderator. I see lots of questions in the chat box. Yes, and would like to have some time to address one by one, and some questions, they really specifically goes to the different speakers. The first question, Professor David, it goes to you. I don't know whether you have seen this question in the chat box. Would you like to, Professor David, it's from Jeannie Lim Jing. I hope I pronounced the participant name correctly. he or she said that would like to know in this area when most of our research found that most of the young people are not so competent in handling copyright, IP issues. Any advice on how this problem can be solved, Professor David?
Okay, I thought actually looking at the questions, there were a couple of questions that came together for me. I mean, on one level, I want to respond by saying, well, yes, I mean, these are issues that we need to be teaching about and students need to know about. But I think there is a bigger problem here, which is the risk of looking to education to answer all our problems. Like, for example, Vincent's question, which I think was the first question in there, how do we teach students to detect and question the authenticity of AI generated media? So you have some questions which are saying, should we, how do we teach students to do these things? But my feeling is that actually many of these questions, they are tasks for education, but they are also issues for regulation. So media information literacy, whatever you want to call it, is, these are issues for which educators are not solely responsible. Issues about copyright, issues about the visibility of sources, and there are partly some technical solutions. So how do we move to a system where the use of AI sources has to be acknowledged, has to be watermarked or identified in some way? And those, I think, are issues for regulation. And we need a system of regulation that addresses that question of visibility or transparency and accountability. But we also need a system of regulation that we can actually trust. So a bit of a danger that we sort of pass the buck to education to solve the problem when actually there are bigger issues at stake.
Thank you. And thank you, David. And another question I would like to select for Professor Divina, Frau Max. Well, this question actually is from a student from Professor Zhang Kai. And the question is, he or she, sorry, I don't know the gender. I wanted to ask Professor Divina to basically elaborate more on the security aspect of AI, like who can see your conversations with the tool? Professor Divina?
Well, actually, safety is one of the big dimensions that are dealt with by DigiComp. And so I suggest you go and see what DigiComp is offering. The Europeans are probably the ones who have been thinking most about these issues of safety, and this is what the EU Act actually has been trying to put forward. And if you've seen the EU Act, it has several levels of risks, including risks that are totally forbidden, like massive surveillance is forbidden in the EU. So the providers cannot try to sell systems of this kind. Of course, in education, safety is not dealt the same way. As I was showing you when I was showing you the perimeter of media and information literacy at the beginning, we have protection and participation, and we have risk and opportunity. So when there is a risk, we talk about it, but we also show how there can be an opportunity. So watching videos, helping other people in sports, for instance, is very useful because you can improve your gesture. And so as long as there's consent, as long as the context is very well determined and defined, and both partners or all the partners are aware of this decision, I think the risk is mitigated. But it is good to know that there is also risks that are not generated by you as a user, and that the legal system is going to help you. But as I always say, with legal systems, they can be beautiful. We can have the EU Act, etc. If users are not familiar with the risks and with the different potentialities of the EU acts and the different legal systems, including the copyright system, they're not going to be active in enforcing it, in complaining about it, in signaling to the platforms, in asking for redress of their torts and damages. And so it's a big part of media and information literacy to also show how you can claim more collectively outside your own responsibility as a user. You can claim more collectively damages and torts. So I don't know if I've completely answered that, but please don't think just safety, think also creativity. Don't remain on just a toxic or negative approach to these issues without being naive, of course.
Thank you, Professor Divina. Let me select one last question, not last, but I still find some very interesting questions to be addressed later. But this question I would like to specifically ask Professor Zhang Kai. There's a question from participant saying that should young students be allowed to use generative AI when studying and doing their homework? If so, to what extent, at what school levels? And because once students start to use generative AI, they could soon become reliant on generative AI. So what are your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions here? Professor Zhang?
Hi, this is really challenging. It's a good question. And also, this is a question not only me to answer, I think the whole society and whole the educator, and even for the the creator of AI need to think about it. But at the present, for me, I embrace the new technology, and because when I'm using it, the precondition is when I'm using the technology or with the ChatGPT or something related to the AI, I have to be very clear who I am. So when I'm using the technology, we cannot make ourselves lost while using the AI tools. So in this sense, now for all the teachers, educators, and even for the parents, I think we cannot to close the door for the youngsters to use the AI tools, because this is our world. Today our world is with the technology, so we cannot close the door for the children to the world. So we need to let them to use it. But anyway, we have to educate them and give them suggestion and tell them proper way to use the tools and for what purpose and how to use it. I think so. In that way, so this is a big question for the field of education to answer. So we have to create a new, course now for students. In China, we have a kind of information technology, something like that. There's a course, but it also lag behind, and actually at the present time, lots according to my knowledge, lots of parents and even the teacher from primary school and the middle school, even the universities, they are not, they're reluctant to let the student to use this technology or the AI machines. But I don't think this is a proper way. It's a good way, and we need to be open-minded and let them know the risk, and let them know the positives and the negatives impact, the parts of the WeChat or AI tools. In that case, they can make use of the information technologies. Yeah, I think for the people's developments, we cannot say, I don't need it. We have to have a good collaboration with the machines. Yeah. So my idea, in a sense, my idea is my purpose, and my suggestion is let the children and let the teenagers, have a chances to connect with the technology.
Thank you so much, Professor Zhang. Well, to be honest, there are some other very interesting questions I would like to ask to all of you, but there is two questions in the Q&A session, and there is a participant named Guy Berger. Hi, Guy. I know you're here, but thank you very much for joining today. And the Dr. Guy Berger asked, can panelists say something more about adding political economy to media and information literacy in relation to AI ownership and content? Would you, all three of you, would you please say, like, very briefly to this, responding to Guy Berger's question? Adding the political economy perspective to the meal. Yeah, Professor David. Yeah, okay. So the floor is yours.
I think this is absolutely right. And I think it is, it's a dimension of how we look at media in the context of media education. It should be an emphasis in how we deal with AI as well. That's easy to say and harder to achieve, but I think there are ways in which students can and should, if you're using those tools, they need to be aware of how did those tools come to be? Why are they in the classroom in the first place? How are they designed and governed and regulated, and by whom? And I think that's absolutely an essential part of the picture. And as that questioner said, that also does go to the question of transparency. Yes, because if AI tools are able to harvest data without saying where that data comes from, then that is a fantastically lucrative and easy process for them to engage in. And if I can just quickly link it back, because there were several questions there about how far should we allow students to use AI, as with the debate about mobile phones in schools and so on. I mean, I would say, firstly, schools do not have to use technology just because technology is available. Schools and teachers can and should be choosing which technologies to use. But the bigger problem, in a sense, is that we don't even know if our students are using AI in the first place. We might think, well, yes, it's fine for them to use it if they acknowledge where it is they've used it, how they've used it, and so on. But if it's not transparent, if we don't actually know, and they don't necessarily have to acknowledge where they're using it, then there is a real problem, I think.
Thank you, David. And Professor Divina, I suppose that you would like to say something about the political economy perspective to the meal.
Yes, I'm just adding a little bit on what David is saying. Thank you, Guy, for this question. There is definitely a geopolitics also of a geopolitical economy of media that we always teach. And there's a competition going on, and people have to be aware of it. I just wanted to answer to the part on open source, because it is important in the current situation to remind everybody that there is no fatality to commercial OpenAI systems, that there is an alternative that is the open source. There's open source Moodle, there's OpenAI, Moodle, etc. They're all upgrading to there, and there is a big community there that and it's going to enable people or communities to create their own LLMs, their own entities where they'll have control of the black box, because they'll have control of the data at the entry, and as a result, hopefully at the output level. But like you're suggesting with the C2PA Guy, which is to say this project to make authentic contents or sourcing of the authenticity of AI, I think we are going to work towards tools like that. And I think that's going to be good for schools and for educators. At the moment, what we're missing most in most universities is guidelines for how to use AI. In some places, no use. Among some teachers, no use. Others, total use. And I've contributed with the Elon University and the College of American Universities to a sort of how to use AI, and we're doing the same thing at Sorbonne Web. I think we are in an emergency now to give guidelines, general guidelines to all educators on how to use AI. And how to quote AI and how to authenticate AI. They exist, it can be done. It's totally a media and information literacy task. Because nobody else is doing it otherwise. So I think it's a very important moment, and the role of the UN or the role of UNESCO in my mind is to share these guidelines so that we all push towards a very common vision about what we consider quality AI.
Thank you, Professor Divina. And Professor Zhang, would you like to make the final comment or echo the other speaker saying, and I know that you are not only the educator at school, but also the educator in family. Do you have any suggestions to like students and children, parents? Professor Zhang?
Okay, so my first suggestion is all the parents and the teachers, they should have open-minded and give the chances for the children to use the AI, technologies. But and also before or while in the process of the using, and the teacher and the parents have to give the proper guide for the children to use these machines. And also let them know and tell them some in the, for example, for academic, I would say the social political implications of AI, like autonomous transportation, machine bias, and the black box problems like this one. So we really need to let the students. I mean, this is a duty and responsibility for the adults to let the children know these problems while they're using the technologies.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, we have to embrace the technology, and also we have to be aware of the challenges and the problems. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, all of our speakers, for all your insightful sharing. And we don't have enough time. Well, next time, I'm sure if I have other opportunity, I will make this at least 2 hours, not just 1 hour.
Thank you.
We haven't addressed so many questions in the chat box and the Q&A, and also some of questions are really, really interested me. For example, how can we use AI to mitigate the bias, and how can we get along with AI and co-create, which is the keyword for all of you that mentioned, and what is the critical means, and all of those issues, and I'm so interested in and look forward to further sharing from your side, and if we have other opportunities. And then before closing today's webinar, I just want to have a final comment from my side. Well, as I said in the beginning, this webinar starts with simple questions, which really matters to all of us. But after today's sharing, I think this webinar unlocks more questions which are important to us to think about. For example, know how to be, know how to become. And also we need to question the tools that we're using from David. And my following question is how to question, and what questions should we ask the tools that we're using? And also the keyword from Professor Zhang that we are shaping the AI. Actually, not only AI is shaping our life, but we are co-shaping and evaluating together. So all of those questions could be addressed, and I think the media and information literacy, or whatever we call it, and could provide an approach and contribute to these questions. And I hope I want to take this opportunity to keep this conversation open in the long term, and hopefully that we will have another opportunity to engage and to discuss more. And yeah, so I just give one sentence to each speaker to end today's webinar, and you can share your feeling, or you can share more questions, or you can share one last comment, just one sentence, and before my closing this webinar. Professor David, would you be the first?
I'm not sure if I have a last sentence, really. I would just like to say thank you very much for this. And this is a developing discussion, isn't it? You know, and I think part of what we need to understand is how these tools and the business that lies behind them is evolving, and we need to keep a very sharp eye on what is going on. That's all I would say.
Thank you. Professor Zhang, one last
Okay,
sentence.
now, yeah, one sentence, one sentence, first half. Thank you very much. And also it's a very good chance for me to see Professor Devi, once again. And also it's a very good chance for me to know Professor Divinian. Yes, I'm really astonished, and I'm sorry, I'm really happy and excited to hear your speeches, and hope to have more chances to work together with you. Thank you very much.
Professor Divina, you are the last but not the least.
Well, I'm going to say it in Chinese. 谢谢你.
Oh, 谢谢.
But well, I'm very pleased with the discussions that are appearing in the boxes, and what I sense, and that's my answer always when I talk about artificial intelligence, is that we have collective intelligence, and that's ours, and ours to groom and ours to grow. And that's what I hope for us, is that we keep growing it. Thank you. Daijian.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I would like to say goodbye to all of you and have a nice day, and welcome to keep in touch, and we will make this developing conversation ongoing. Okay, so this is not the...
Okay, thank you. Nice weekend. Yeah.
Have a nice
My
weekend.
student is here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all speakers and participants. Thank you for your time being with us.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so